I wasn't supposed to be at that cafe. It was a Monday. Cold, gray, and soaked with that kind of February drizzle that never turns into proper rain, just seeps into your bones. I was supposed to be at work, typing emails and nodding through Zoom calls, but my train had been delayed by some mechanical failure, and after standing on the platform for 20 minutes surrounded by coughing strangers and foggy windows, I said screw it and called in sick. The cafe was quiet. A small place tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop. One of those spots that feels like it belongs to no time period in particular. It had a fogged-up front window, creaky chairs, and a bitter espresso that punched you right in the sternum. I sat by the window, scrolling on my phone, trying to look busy. That's when I heard them. 2 men behind me. Ordinary voices. One deep, slow-paced. The other slightly nasal, like someone with permanent congestion. I wasn't paying much attention, at first. Just the background hum of strangers' lives bleeding into my own. Then something made my ears go still. I don't think he sleeps well, the nasal voice said. You know? He does that thing. He jolts awake, like someone who's falling. That startle reflex. I froze. My thumb hovered above my screen. Deep voice replied. He's had it since he was a kid. Night terrors. Still gets them. I think he bit his tongue in his sleep last week. That was true. I had woken up 2 nights ago with a metallic taste in my mouth. Checked the mirror. A dark red gash on the side of my tongue. I hadn't told anyone. They kept talking. I stopped breathing. You ever notice how he doesn't lock the bathroom door? Always just pulls it shut like someone might need to get in. The chair creaked as I slowly turned my head, just enough to catch a reflection in the window. 2 men, maybe mid-40s, dressed in business casual, like off-duty consultants. One of them stirred his coffee with an absent hand. The other was watching the street, like he wasn't saying anything unusual. I couldn't see their faces clearly, just the blur of their mouths moving. But they kept going. He doesn't even know yet. About the date. That part's still coming. The nasal one chuckled. My stomach dropped. I turned fully, like an idiot, like they wouldn't notice, but the second I did, they stopped talking. They didn't look surprised. They didn't even glance my way. One stood up and stretched. The other drained the rest of his coffee and left a tip under the cup. No urgency, no guilt, just like they'd finished a meeting and were heading to the next one. They walked out. I stayed seated, staring at the empty chairs behind me. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. My coffee had gone cold. I finally laughed quietly. Nervous reflex. Told myself I'd misheard. That they were talking about someone else. A coincidence. It had to be. Right. I didn't sleep well that night. Big surprise. Kept trying to tell myself I'd imagined it. That the conversation wasn't about me, just some unlucky guy who happened to share my quirks. I mean, they weren't that rare, were they? Lots of people don't lock bathroom doors. And night terrors, yeah, common enough. But the tongue thing. That stuck. Still, I went to work the next day like nothing had happened. Stared at spreadsheets, nodded through meetings, told a coworker I had some bug, when they asked why I looked like I hadn't slept in a week. I kept thinking about how they talked. Calm. Casual. Like I was a subject in a file. A product report. The kind of dispassionate tone you use when discussing a houseplant that's not doing so well. I wanted to let it go. Truly. I wanted to believe I was being paranoid. So I made a list of rational explanations in a notes app. Coincidence. Talking about someone else. Eavesdropping out of context. Minor paranoia. Lack of sleep equals overreaction. The list didn't help. That evening, just to settle my nerves, I went back to the cafe. They weren't there. Different crowd, college kids, 2 exhausted moms, an old guy reading a book about submarines. I sat by the window again. Ordered tea this time. Nothing happened. On the way home, I almost felt relief. Almost started laughing at myself. Because how self-absorbed do you have to be to assume strangers are talking about you? But then, right as I turned the key in my apartment door, I noticed it. The lock felt stiff. I paused, turned it back and forth. Maybe just humidity, I thought. Inside, everything looked normal. Lights off, TV remote on the coffee table, a mug still in the sink from that morning. But I couldn't shake the feeling. So I did something I hadn't done in months. I checked the app connected to my apartment's smart lock. It shows you a log of when the door has been opened. There was a new entry from 2:17 p.m. I'd been at work. I live alone. No one else has the code. There was no video. The app's camera had malfunctioned. That night, I locked the bathroom door and my bedroom door and slept with the light on. 3 days passed. No more weird conversations. No unexplained entries in my lock app. I started convincing myself it was over, whatever it was. Maybe it really was all just some weird coincidence layered on top of a tech glitch and a bad week of sleep. Then Friday came. I was on the subway, headed home. Rush hour. Packed tight. The air was thick with the smell of damp jackets and body spray. I had my earbuds in, not playing anything, just a trick I used to avoid having to talk to people. I liked to watch the blur of tunnel lights slide by. That's when I heard it again. 2 people standing just behind me, swaying with the train. A man and a woman this time. The woman said, "He's always watching people, but he doesn't think they notice. Makes him feel safe." That, and walking the long way home. The man chuckled. Yeah. Past the fire station, through the park, even though it takes 20 extra minutes. He tells himself it's for the fresh air. I didn't move. Didn't blink. I could see their reflection in the train window, just their shapes. The man was tall, broad-shouldered. The woman wore a red scarf with little silver patterns stitched in. They kept talking. He still keeps that box of stuff from when his mom died, she said. He never opens it, but he won't throw it away. It's under his bed. Right-hand side. I felt my chest go tight. That box was hidden, sealed with tape. I hadn't touched it in years. The man leaned closer to her. I wonder if he'll open it before the 14th. That's cutting it close. She laughed softly. He won't. He's not ready. They got off at the next stop. I followed. By the time I got to the platform, they were gone. I ran up the stairs 2 at a time. Looked left, then right. Hundreds of people. No red scarf. No broad-shouldered man. Nothing. I stood there for maybe 5 minutes, completely still, while the world moved around me. Horns blaring. Footsteps clattering. My skin buzzing like it had forgotten how to belong to me. That night, I went home and pulled the box out from under the bed. It was right where they said it would be. Untouched. Still taped shut. But something strange had happened to the top flap. A smudge. A single, greasy fingerprint I hadn't left. The fingerprint was faint. Like the touch of someone who hadn't meant to leave a trace. I stared at it for too long. Half hoping it was mine. But I'd only handled the box by the sides. Always had. That was the rule. I never touched the top. Not since the day I sealed it. Inside were things I hadn't looked at in years. Photos, old letters, hospital bills. A scarf that still smelled faintly like her, my mother. Dead 7 years now. I didn't open it. I didn't want to. Instead, I pushed it to the back of the closet, deeper this time, under a pile of sweaters I never wear. Then I took a shower, letting the water run hotter than I could stand, trying to burn the feeling off me. The next morning, I called my friend Mark. He's the closest thing I have to someone I can talk to without rehearsing the conversation in my head first. We met in college. He's loud, sarcastic, allergic to bullshit. The kind of guy who'd call you out if you said the moon was round just to make sure you really believed it. I told him about the cafe, the subway, the fingerprint. I left out the box. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "Okay, let's say it's real. Just hypothetically. If someone was watching you like that, what would they even get out of it? You're not some celebrity. You're not rich. You don't work for the government. Thanks for the ego boost, I said. You know what I mean. But that was the problem, wasn't it? There was no logic to it. No motive. That's what made it worse. If someone was trying to scare me, they were doing a great job, but why? If it was a prank, it was too elaborate. Too personal. If it was surveillance, it was too public. Conversations in cafes? On trains? Who does that? Mark tried to comfort me the way men tend to, by giving advice instead of actually acknowledging the fear. Just record it, he said. Next time you hear them. Voice memos on your phone. That way you'll know if you're imagining it. It wasn't a bad idea. So that day, I charged my phone fully. Cleared space. Opened the voice memos app and kept it on my home screen. Ready. I didn't hear anything that day. Or the day after. By the third day, I was almost disappointed. Then, as I walked home through the park, my usual long way, I passed a man feeding birds on a bench. Middle-aged. Trim beard. Expensive coat. He didn't look up as I passed. But just as I walked by, I heard him say, under his breath, "He's recording now. Wonder who he thinks will believe him." I turned, heart pounding. But he just kept feeding the birds. Never looked at me. Never said another word. That night, I played the recording back at least a dozen times. The voice was there. Crisp. Right after my footsteps stopped. "He's recording now. Wonder who he thinks will believe him." I sent the clip to Mark. He called me 5 minutes later. "Okay, man," he said. "That's weird. But maybe he was talking to someone else? You were in a park. Maybe he was on the phone." I wanted to agree with him. I wanted to laugh and say, "Yeah, that's probably it." But there had been no phone in that man's hands. No earbuds. Nothing. I remembered the way he never even looked up, never broke rhythm with the handfuls of bread he tossed to the birds. And the way he said it? Like it wasn't a question. Like it wasn't even meant for me. I started thinking in circles. Maybe I was misunderstanding everything. Maybe I'd always been a little off. Maybe I was finally tipping over the edge. Quietly. Neatly. Like a stack of papers sliding off a desk. I went back to the park the next day. The bench was there. So were the birds. But the man was gone. I started sitting in public spaces more often, phone at the ready. Cafes, bus stops, bookstores. Just watching. Listening. Waiting. Nothing. 4 days. And then, on a Thursday afternoon, I heard something new. I was at the public library, of all places. Sitting in one of the old wooden chairs by the second-floor window. A group of teenagers were at the next table, quietly doing homework. A woman was pacing near the shelves, talking to someone on her cell. But 2 men at a nearby table, maybe 30 feet away, were murmuring to each other. I wasn't paying attention at first, just scanning headlines on my phone, trying to distract myself. Then one of them said clearly, "He never told anyone about that camping trip. Not even the girl. You remember the girl? The one with the scar on her arm?" The other nodded. "Yeah. The one who panicked when he disappeared for an hour. Thought he drowned in the lake." I froze. That happened when I was 16. A summer camp trip. I'd wandered off alone after a fight with one of the counselors. I just needed space. One of the girls in our group, Rachel, had freaked out when I didn't come back after an hour. Thought I'd died. They called search and rescue. Nobody knew. I just sat by the lake, thinking. I didn't tell anyone. Especially not about Rachel. I stood up too fast. My chair scraped the floor. The men looked at me. Not in surprise. Not like they'd been caught. Just acknowledged me. One of them smiled. Just a little. As if to say, "You're catching up." Then they got up and walked away. I didn't follow. I just stood there, in the middle of the library, surrounded by strangers, with the sound of my own pulse drowning everything else out. And for the first time, I thought, what if I'm not being watched? What if I'm being studied? After the library, something changed. I stopped trying to tell myself I was imagining it. There was too much detail. Too much intent behind the things they said. And it was always them. Different people. Different voices. But always the same knowledge. Like they were reading from the same script. Or file. Or dossier. I started seeing them everywhere. Not all at once, never that obvious. Just one or two at a time. People who would glance at me just a bit too long. Say something as I passed. A phrase, a date, a name I hadn't spoken out loud in years. It was Tuesday when I saw the woman with the yellow nails. I was at the dry cleaners, standing in line. Normal day. I remember this because I just picked up my best coat, the one I wear when I want to look like I've got my life together. She was behind me. Maybe in her late 30s. Her hair was tied up in a messy bun, sunglasses pushed back on her head. She looked like any tired commuter. Except for her nails, bright yellow, sharp, like small painted knives. She tapped one against her phone. Tap. 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 Then she said loud enough for me to hear. His father cried when they put him in the ground, you know. Not during the funeral. After. In the car. Like he was embarrassed by it. I went still. Then she added softer. He watched through the window. That's how he knew. I turned around. She didn't flinch. Just looked up from her phone, smiling like she was waiting to be helped. Nothing in her face showed recognition. Nothing that said I know who you are. But she did. Because what she said was true. I'd seen my dad cry once in my life. After the funeral. When he thought I couldn't see him. Slumped behind the steering wheel, parked outside our house, holding the funeral program in his lap like it weighed 100 pounds. I never told anyone about that. Not once. The woman didn't say another word. When it was her turn, she picked up a bag of clothes, thanked the clerk, and left. I followed her out. She turned the corner at the end of the street, walking calmly, purse swinging by her side. I was 10 seconds behind. When I turned the same corner, she was gone. No cars pulling away. No buildings she could have ducked into. Just an empty sidewalk and the faint scent of jasmine perfume in the air. Like she'd evaporated. That night, I couldn't stop hearing voices. Not real ones, not people talking about me in cafes or parks or dry cleaners. I mean literal static. Whispering through the walls. Curling through the vents. Barely audible, like the background hum of a TV left on in another room. At first I thought it was the neighbors. But I live alone. Top floor. No one above me. And the unit next door's been empty since December. I checked. I turned off everything, lights, fridge, Wi-Fi router. Even unplugged my microwave. Still, it was there. That low, persistent hiss. Not loud. Just present. And inside of it, now and then I could swear I heard a word. My name. Spoken slow. Drawn out like a question, Liam. Yeah, that's me. I haven't told you that yet, have I? Doesn't matter. They already know. I recorded it, desperate for proof. Played it back. Nothing. Just silence. But I kept hearing it. In the morning, I found something written on my bathroom mirror. I hadn't noticed it before because the glass had fogged up from the shower. But once it cleared, the message was there. Faint. As if someone had written it with a fingertip days ago. Don't trust the quiet ones. I stared at it, numb. I live alone. And I don't write things in steam. I checked every window. Every door. I changed the code on my smart lock. Again. But that didn't stop the next incident. Later that same day, I was sitting on a bench near the waterfront, trying to feel normal. People watching. Breathing in the cold air. Reminding myself that the world was still solid. Still there. That's when a man sat down beside me. Didn't look at me. Just lit a cigarette and exhaled slowly. And then, like commenting on the weather, he said, "She used to hum when she cut your hair. Remember that?" My throat closed. He added, "You always worried she'd slip with the scissors. But she never did." He was talking about my mother. Again. She used to cut my hair on the balcony when I was a kid. Always humming low, tuneless songs she made up. I hated the feeling of the scissors that close to my neck. But I never moved. He flicked ash onto the sidewalk and said, "You're almost out of time." I turned to him, finally. "What does that mean?" He didn't answer. Just smiled. Then he got up and walked away. I didn't follow this time. I just sat there, in the bitter wind, trying to figure out how they knew things I'd never said out loud. Not even to myself. I started keeping a notebook. I wrote down every encounter. Every phrase I overheard. Every person who said something they shouldn't have known. I filled pages with descriptions, timestamps, sketches of faces I tried to remember, though they always blurred later in my mind, like dreams you can't quite hang on to after waking. I stopped telling people. Mark thought I was spiraling. "Man, I think you need to talk to someone," he said during our last phone call. "I'm talking to you," I replied. "No, like a professional. This isn't healthy." I could hear the distance in his voice. The soft, careful tone people use when they've already decided they don't believe you, but they still want to seem supportive. He suggested a psychiatrist. I never called. The encounters kept happening. But what changed next wasn't what I heard. It was who I tried to follow. I became obsessed with catching one of them. Really catching them. Not just seeing them disappear around corners or slip onto a train. I wanted answers. So when I saw a man near the post office, bald, wearing a heavy wool coat, murmuring into his phone about how he still checks the back seat before getting in the car, which I do every time, I didn't hesitate. I followed him. He walked like he had nowhere to be. Slow, deliberate steps. Down the block, around a corner, past the hardware store. I stayed just far enough behind. He turned into an alley. I waited 10 seconds. Heart hammering. Then I followed. The alley was empty. Not a single person. No doorways, no side exits, no open fences. Just dumpsters and a rusted fire escape. It was like he dissolved into the bricks. I walked the length of the alley 3 times. Then I noticed something. A single sheet of paper, tucked under a loose brick. Folded once. I pulled it out. On it was a list. Typed. Clean font. Aligned. It read, "Sleeps on right side. Talks to himself in car. Kept shoebox from ex-girlfriend until June 2023. Eats last, even when hungry. Still thinks about the drowned boy." That last one hit like a punch. It wasn't even something I knew I thought about. But it was true. When I was 9, a kid drowned at the lake during a summer trip. I didn't see it happen. But I saw them pull his body out. I think about it more than I admit. More than I even realized. I stared at the paper for a long time. Then I burned it in my sink. Watched it curl and vanish. That night, I checked the notebook. It was gone. Pages torn clean. As if it had never existed. After the notebook disappeared, I stopped sleeping properly. I tried, but my body wouldn't cooperate. I'd lie still for hours, the sheets too cold or too hot, the silence heavy with something watching. Every noise outside became a threat. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like footsteps I wasn't making. I started leaving the lights on. Stopped going to work. Stopped answering calls from Mark. I couldn't trust anything anymore, especially my own sense of what was real. But I knew they were still watching, still talking, even if I couldn't catch them in the act. Even if they were getting better at hiding. And then came the mirror. It was a stupid idea. A post I read online, one of those weird conspiracy forums where people talk about observation layers, and non-human monitors, and signal bleed. 99% of it was nonsense, paranoid garbage. But one thread mentioned them. Not by name, not directly, but the way the poster described the feeling, the patterns, the whispers. It was close enough. Someone had written, "Try the mirror trick. 3:33 a.m. Say your name 3 times and ask who's watching. Sometimes it works. But be ready." It sounded ridiculous. But I did it anyway. I set my alarm. Got up at 3:31. Sat in front of the bathroom mirror in the dark. Just the dim blue light of the hallway spilling in behind me. My face looked wrong. Pale, tired, like a stranger who'd worn my skin too long. I waited until 3:33. Then whispered, "Liam." 3 times. Then, "Who's watching me?" Silence. Just the distant hum of the refrigerator. But then, after a few seconds, my reflection moved. Not much. Just a flicker. A tilt of the head that didn't match mine. Like a skipped frame in a video. I leaned forward, breath shallow. "Who's watching me?" I asked again. And my reflection smiled. I didn't. It wasn't my smile. It was too wide. Too patient. Like someone who'd been waiting for me to ask the right question for a very, very long time. I scrambled back so fast I hit the sink. Slammed the light on. The reflection was normal again. I stared at it for 10 minutes. It didn't move again. But ever since that night, I don't look at mirrors the same way. I keep catching that smile. Just at the edge of things. Just long enough to know it wasn't a dream. It started with a calendar notification. It popped up on my phone while I was brushing my teeth. No app name. No sender. Just a single alert. Event, Yendi/when, 14 days from now. No location. No time. Just that one word, Yendi. I stared at it, foam in my mouth, toothbrush still moving like my body hadn't caught up with my brain. I tried to tap it. Nothing happened. Tried to delete it, no option. It was like it wasn't part of any app one owned. And I remembered what one of them had said back in the cafe. "He doesn't even know yet. About the date. That part's still coming." I checked the calendar. The event wasn't there anymore. But I knew what I'd seen. From that moment on, the frequency changed. I couldn't go anywhere without hearing pieces of myself leak out of strangers' mouths. At the grocery store. "He checks the expiration dates on milk, even though he never drinks it fast enough to matter." At the pharmacy. "He started biting his nails again. Only the right hand, though." Even on TV, background actors murmuring lines that had nothing to do with the scene. One soap opera character looked straight at the camera, mid-conversation, and said, "He knows we're getting close." I threw my remote across the room. I didn't leave my apartment for 2 days after that. Just sat in the corner, curtains drawn, trying to make sense of it. I considered going to the hospital. Telling them I was hearing voices. That I was scared of being followed. But I knew how that would go. I'd be asked if I was a danger to myself. If I wanted to hurt anyone. And when I said no, they'd give me pills and send me home. Maybe lock me in for a night. They wouldn't be in there with me. But they'd still be watching. Still whispering. I kept wondering what the END meant. The end of what? My life? My mind? Or maybe it meant something worse. Something I couldn't name yet. And then, just when I thought it couldn't go deeper, someone knocked on my door. 3 slow knocks. I checked the peephole. No one was there. But taped to my door was a piece of paper. Typed. Same font as before. This one read, "Your final observation begins tomorrow." I didn't sleep that night. Not even close. I lay in bed, eyes open, the dark pressing in on all sides, ears straining for any noise, any sign that someone was in the apartment with me. But it wasn't the fear of someone breaking in that kept me awake. It was the fear that someone never left. Morning came like a slow bleed of gray through the blinds. I didn't open them. Didn't want to see who might be out there. Instead, I showered, dressed, and stepped outside like I was stepping onto a stage. The world felt wrong. People walked past me on the sidewalk with blank faces and hurried strides. But now I didn't see strangers anymore. I saw watchers. Observers. Hidden participants in whatever this was. A man pushing a stroller glanced up as he passed, eyes flicking toward me just a second too long. A teenage girl waiting at the crosswalk muttered something under her breath. I caught the word. Countdown. At the coffee shop, the barista smiled and said, "You're brave coming out today." I froze. She tilted her head. "Your drink?" I took it and left. Everyone was in on it. That's how it felt. Like I'd stepped into a play I didn't remember auditioning for. And somehow, everyone had been handed a script but me. I ducked into a bookstore, one of those quiet, dusty ones with crooked shelves and the smell of old pages, and stayed there for hours. Pretending to read. Watching the front entrance like something might come crawling through it on all fours. No one said anything strange. But they kept looking. Not obvious stares. Just little flickers of attention. People whose eyes found mine and didn't move away fast enough. Or people who smiled like they knew I'd finally started figuring it out. I left the store when it got dark. Took the long way home again, my usual ritual, as if more time on foot somehow made me safer. I passed the same park, the same fire station, the same diner with its flickering sign. But tonight, every window had eyes behind it. Every person I passed whispered something, just out of earshot. My name, maybe? Or worse, words I didn't understand. That night, back in my apartment, I taped over the mirrors. I turned off the lights and crawled into bed. But I didn't sleep. I just waited. For whatever tomorrow was supposed to bring. Something's happening to the electronics. It started with the phone. I woke up to it buzzing, screen flashing like it was glitching out, apps opening and closing on their own, calendar pulsing between days like someone was swiping back and forth, faster than any finger could. Then the voice memo app opened. And started recording. I snatched the phone off the nightstand and tried to shut it off. It froze. Just sat there, red light blinking, timer counting upward. I threw it in the sink. Turned on the faucet. Sparks. Smoke. Dead. Later, I powered up my laptop. I shouldn't have. As soon as it booted, a video opened on its own. No file name. Just a black screen at first, then static. Then a frame of me. Sitting on the edge of my bed. From behind. I hadn't recorded it. I don't own a webcam. And yet there I was. Shoulders hunched. Hands trembling. Watching myself through someone else's lens. The video didn't stop. It jumped. Skipped. Like surveillance footage cut together by someone careless. Me brushing my teeth. Me asleep. Me crying in the hallway at 2 a.m., rocking back and forth like I was trying to leave my own body. And then, frame by frame, it began to zoom. Closer to my face. Closer to my eyes. Until finally it stopped. Just a single frame. Me, staring directly into the camera. Mouth open like I just said something. And across the bottom of the screen, a line of white text. "He's almost ready." I slammed the laptop shut. Unplugged it. Pulled the battery. I wanted to throw it out the window. But a small part of me, God help me, wanted to keep it. Like I'd need it later. Like it was evidence. But evidence of what? Of a breakdown? Or something worse? I went into the bathroom, turned on the light, and caught a glimpse of myself in the small gap between the mirror and the tape I'd put over it. I looked gray. Drained. But there was something behind my eyes. Like someone else was looking out. I started marking the days. Literally. I found an old wall calendar buried in a drawer, one of those promotional ones from a bank I never used. I flipped ahead to this month, then circled today's date in red. Then tomorrow's. And the day after. Counting down to the end. Whatever it meant. I kept the calendar taped to the fridge, the only surface I hadn't already covered in notes, scraps of memory, names I thought I recognized. My apartment had become a bunker. A paranoid war room. Strings would have been next, if I'd had the energy. I didn't leave for 3 days. Didn't eat much either. I drank water. Watched the hallway through the peephole. Covered all the vents and light fixtures. Even unscrewed a smoke detector just in case they'd stuck something inside it. Still, things kept showing up. Little signs I wasn't alone. One morning, I found all my kitchen chairs turned backward. Perfectly aligned. Like someone had rearranged them during the night. Another time, I found the word, observed, written in pencil under the lid of my toilet tank. Faint, like it had been there for weeks, months even, but I'd never seen it before. And then came the calls. No number. Just unknown. No voice on the other end. Just static. And something buried inside it. I couldn't make it out at first, just a pattern. Then words. The same ones, over and over. You were never yours. I started unplugging everything. Phone. Router. TV. Didn't matter. I still heard it. Sometimes from the vents. Sometimes from inside the walls. Once, from under my bed. That's when I started sleeping in the bathtub, door locked, with a knife tucked under my leg. Not that I thought it would help. Not that I thought this was the kind of thing you could fight. But it gave me the illusion of control. And when the whispers started saying my name again, slowly, like they were trying it on, I whispered back, I hear you. And they stopped. Only for a moment. But it was the first time they went silent. Which was somehow worse. I think today is the day before the end. At least, that's what the calendar says. Only one red circle left. The thing is, I don't remember drawing it. I remember drawing the others. Every one. I made a ritual of it. Red Sharpie, same time each morning, like I could keep the panic at bay by making a clean mark, telling myself I still had time. But the final circle, tomorrow's date, was already there when I woke up. And not in red. It was black. Heavy. Pressed so hard it bled through to the page beneath. Like whoever made it wanted me to see it. Wanted it to be final. I don't know if I even trust the apartment anymore. Every wall feels too thin, like there's something crawling just behind the drywall, listening. Waiting. Last night, I opened a cupboard to find it full of items I didn't recognize. Canned food brands I've never bought. A ceramic mug shaped like a dog I've never owned. A photograph of me as a child, smiling at the camera. But in a house I've never lived in. I threw it all out. But when I opened the fridge this morning, the same items were in there too. No food. Just the same mug, the photo, and a single note taped to the inside of the door. Tomorrow it stops. I don't know where to go anymore. I can't trust the streets. Can't trust the people. Everyone's face is starting to blur, like I'm losing the ability to tell real from fake. Even the birds sound wrong now, too rhythmic. Too intentional. I walked for miles today. No destination. Just moving. Like if I kept going long enough, I'd slip out of their reach. Walk right off the edge of the script they've written for me. But at every corner, every bus stop, every glass surface, I saw myself. Reflected. And behind me, always someone watching. Not the same person. Not even the same shape. But always there. Like they were trading shifts. Near dusk, I sat down on a bench. Didn't know where I was. Couldn't remember how I got there. That's when someone sat beside me. A man. Or something pretending to be a man. He didn't look at me. Just rested his elbows on his knees, staring forward. Then, very softly, he said, "You've done well, Liam." I didn't respond. Couldn't. He turned his head slowly. And in the reflection of his glasses, I didn't see my own face. I saw a room. Sterile. Glass walls. Wires. A clipboard. And me, strapped to a chair. Eyes open. Mouth moving soundlessly. I blinked. He was gone. The bench was empty again. But something cold was in my pocket. A keycard. Plain white. No writing. No logo. Just a red fingerprint on the corner. Not mine. I didn't sleep. Didn't try. I sat at my kitchen table with the keycard in front of me, turning it over and over in my hand, watching the way it caught the light. No label. No clue. Just a blood-red fingerprint, dry and flaking slightly at the edges. It didn't feel like a choice. It felt like I was being pulled. At 3 a.m. I left. I walked the streets like a ghost, barely noticing the cold or the empty sidewalks. The city was dead quiet. Not deserted, just watching. I could feel it. The buildings, the street lamps, the blinking crosswalk signs. All part of the same system. The same eyes. The keycard guided me. Not literally, but every time I stopped walking, I'd feel a pressure in my chest. A tightening. A quiet nudge in the bones that said, not there. Keep going. And so I did. At 3:47 a.m., I found the building. It didn't look like much. Just a blank gray box tucked between two warehouses near the river. No signage. No windows. Just a narrow steel door with a small black reader beside it. I pulled the keycard from my pocket. It slid through the reader with a soft beep. The door clicked open. Inside, sterile white hallways. Bright overhead lights. The scent of antiseptic and something older, like dust but deeper. I followed the corridor. No signs. No people. No cameras I could see. But I knew I was being watched. I knew I always had been. The hallway ended in a glass room. And inside the room, me. Strapped to a chair. Eyes open. Mouth slack. Head tilted slightly, like I'd fallen asleep watching something horrible just beyond the wall. I stood at the glass for a long time. Tried to move. Couldn't. Not at first. Then slowly, the me in the chair turned his head. Met my eyes. Smiled. And mouthed something. 2 words. Observation complete. The lights flickered. Then everything went black. I woke up in my bed. Morning sunlight bleeding through the blinds. No keycard. No red circle on the calendar. No signs of anything strange. My apartment was clean. Empty. Normal. Too normal. I checked the mirror. My reflection was just me. I think. The phone buzzed. An email from work. Something about returning next week. Nothing happened, apparently. No missed days logged. No concerned messages from Mark. As if none of it happened. Or maybe that's the final part of the observation. The cleanup. Make it all look like it never happened, so they can see how I respond. How I try to forget. But here's the thing. I can't forget. I hear things in white noise. I see faces linger too long in reflections. And sometimes, when I pass strangers on the street, they nod at me. Like they recognize something in me now. Like I'm one of them. Maybe I am. Maybe I always was. But I know this. They know everything about me. They always did. And now? I think I know a little about them. Enough to start watching back.